Welcome back to Season 7 of the Mindshare Podcast. This is where we share strategies and insights to help you work smarter, build stronger relationships, and create the success that you deserve. This show is proudly sponsored by Kit's Keep in Touch Systems, your ultimate marketing and lead generation CRM. REM Real Estate Magazine, Canada's trusted source for real estate news and insights. And Revel Realty, redefining real estate with bold marketing, cutting-edge training, and a culture that empowers success. Learn more about our sponsors and download your free copy of the Ultimate Marketing Bundle at mindshare101.com. While you're there, discover how our full range of services can help take your business to the next level. From one-to-one coaching for personalized growth, to the Mindshare Collective group coaching for community-driven success, momentum training to build unstoppable progress, and keynote speaking to inspire and motivate your team. We are here to elevate your game. And while you're at it, learn more about joining the revolution to experience the bold new way real estate is being redefined. Today's episode is number 318. She is a leader in Canadian real estate with more than 2 decades of experience in governance, program development, fundraising, and membership recruitment. Before becoming the CEO of the Canadian Real Estate Association in January 2024, she was the CEO of the Ottawa Real Estate Board and had served as the Executive Director of the Okanagan Mainline Real Estate Board. She is committed to furthering CREA's federal advocacy efforts, providing realtors with technology and tools they need to succeed, and continuing the success of Realtor.ca. Her dedication to broader causes is reflected in her current role as Vice Chair of World Animal Protection Canada. Joining me on this episode of the Mindshare Podcast is special guest, CREA CEO, Janice Myers. Janice, welcome to the Mindshare Podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
It absolutely is a pleasure to have you here. I thank you. I know you're incredibly busy, and as I sort of look back on what you have done and sort of what you are doing and some of the other roles you have going on, I thought we'd open up and maybe leverage the opportunity to ask you if you could just share maybe a little bit more about your journey in the real estate industry. I mean, you started in the Okanagan, moved to Ottawa. What led to the current role as CEO of CREA?
Yeah, well, thank you for the question about my journey in real estate. It's been over 20 years for sure. My background's in association management. I really love working with boards of directors, bringing their strategy operationally to life, and being that day-to-day person managing the team. And I actually grew up in Saskatchewan. And that's where I had my first association management role with the Saskatchewan 4-H Council, which is a youth leadership organization. My first trip to Ottawa was chaperoning a group of young leaders to talk about how to advocate to government. So that was super cool. And then we moved to BC in 2000, and I ended up working for the Okanagan Mainline Real Estate Board. That's how I got into the industry. During my time in the Okanagan, I also went to work as business development manager for a year with a small real estate team in Vernon, British Columbia. Okay. And then I went back to the board. And then after about 14 years total in the Okanagan, my husband and I were like, well, what should we do next? And we cheers to change. And the next day I got a call from the search firm that was looking for somebody in Ottawa. I was fortunate enough to get that role. And then when I saw the CEO role come up for CREA, because I'd been so involved in the industry for so many years and served on various committees and had been actually actively working with the Realtor.ca task force looking into the future of Realtor.ca, I was like, this is my opportunity. And I put my name into the hat, and I'm just so privileged to be here leading the association at this time.
You know, it's a pleasure to have you. And as you say about the Okanagan, I mean, total aside here, I remember a few years back, we had taken a little motorcycle trip from Toronto. And we had ridden out to, I think it was to Tofino that we had gone to that year. And I know coming back through at one point, we had ridden through the Okanagan Valley. And I was unbeknownst to the fact that we were riding through the Okanagan Valley and stopped like sort of, I guess, at the end of it and had, stopped at a winery. A friend of ours wanted to pick up a bottle of wine. And we said, we think we're in the Okanagan. We're like, where is it? They're like, oh, you're just starting it. We said, oh, we just came from and we're headed this way. Oh, you just finished it. And we're all back thinking, okay, so I've just ridden the motorcycle through the Okanagan Valley and through all the, the different wineries and the fruit stands and the amount. It's just
right. And you're going to ask me why you're going to say, why were you crazy enough to move? You're going to ask me that question.
That's exactly where I was going.
You know what? So, it was mostly about career growth for sure for me. We love the Okanagan, definitely that, but that's where we experienced the first like really crazy real estate market. So we moved there in 2001. The market was a little sleepy, government changed, and boom, things took off. It was in 2005 when I was working actually with that real estate team. Prices were multiplying like crazy, multiple offers on every property. It was very difficult to get into the market. And those conditions were really, really difficult and for everybody involved, home buyers and realtors alike. So we loved our time in the Okanagan, but we're so fortunate, love Ottawa as well. And we happen to also have a place on the water in Quebec, which we could have never afforded in the Okanagan. And so we go out there on the weekends and enjoy, and it's just a wonderful balance of city life and out in the country. Here.
Absolutely. Can you see any mountains from the place in Quebec?
Well, we're at the foothills of the foothills. We don't see any mountains particularly. Okay. And truth be told, the other thing that I love to do is ski, but we haven't skied here in Ontario. We've gone back to either Alberta or BC to ski. Mont Tremblant is probably the best offering here in Quebec, closest by, but yeah, outdoors.
I was just going to say, like, you can't ski in Ontario when you've skied out west. It's just not,
yeah. Although I grew up on a hill.
You can't really call them mountains, right?
No, but I grew up on a hill in Saskatchewan, and they called it Table Mountain. Although it was not a mountain.
Yeah, right.
But that's where I learned to ski. Yeah.
So from a leadership perspective, as we look back at the role, in Ottawa, CEO of of OREB, and we look at, being the director of the Okanagan Mainline Real Estate Board, how did that really shape the approach towards stepping into the role of CEO of CREA?
Well, certainly I had a stakeholder perspective because the CREA is made up of all members, over 160,000 across the country, but they are represented by boards and associations. So whenever I came to Ottawa for CREA meetings or our political action days, which is such a powerful advocacy program that CREA manages, and we put on to make sure that local realtors are connected with their MPs and we speak with one voice on recommendations regarding policy. I would say that bringing that stakeholder perspective into my role has been great. And as well, I've had this amazing network of association executives that work with all the boards and associations. And they were so supportive and behind me. And that communication network has really helped me in the role to get out basically the message about what CREA is doing and really improving the communication between CREA and boards and associations. So those are the things that I've leaned into. On my first 60 to 90 days, I went on what was called a listening tour, talking to association executives across the country, finding out what our shared challenges and opportunities were, and mostly looking for those shared values. And especially to lean into in tough times. And really the values that came out were around inclusivity, collaboration, and strategic alignment. So those are the things that I'm building on this year. My word this year, everybody says, what's your word for the year? My word is build. And I'm going to build on all the excellent things that are already going on here in the Canadian Real Estate Association, the fabulous teams that are working on our advocacy, our economics analysis, our work on reputation, and then, of course, Realtor.ca. So those are sort of the things that we really are working on and leaning into.
You bring up that word communication and sort of piggyback that with collaboration. And it is so imperative that when there are, for any of us, we're all surrounded by a network of people. The communication is imperative, though. If we're not having those open dialogues, if we're not learning, if we're not listening, there is no way to, build. So as we talk about vision and sort of move into that side of things, I guess maybe before the listening tour, maybe during that, I guess we talked to the initial vision for CREA when you took over as CEO, and I guess what was that initial vision, and how has that kind of evolved over the past year now that we sit here today?
Mm-hmm. Well, I went into the job interview with a vision of ensuring that that we were fierce defenders of realtor reputation, and also our advocacy efforts on behalf of all of our realtors and home buyers and sellers. Really, the housing crisis is not going away. It's been the topic of conversation for the last number of years, and it crosses all political lines. And so the conversations are super important, and it's very complex. So my vision was to make sure that our members understood the work that we're doing on advocacy in the beginning, and we were starting to really make some headway there. In fact, this morning I was at the Parliamentary Press Gallery where we gave our first briefing to the press around our housing forecast for 2025. And then the other vision that I had was making sure that Realtor.ca, as our primary asset for realtors, its future was secured. And I was worried about that. And we worked super hard in my first 6 months getting us to the October special meeting where the vote, we got the approval to move forward with spinning it into a for-profit or taxable entity, which is going to be wholly owned by CREA and Realtors, therefore, through their membership in CREA. And yesterday, we actually held our first board meeting for the transition board for Realtor.ca. And we appointed Patrick Pichette, who has been the VP of Realtor.ca, as interim CEO. And we'll begin our full search for a permanent CEO, as well as other members of the board. We have 3 members right now: myself, David Oikel, and our current chair, James Maybe. And David Oikel has been named the chair of the transition board. So in terms of vision, it was all around making sure that realtors understood. And you talked about communication, so important for us to be demonstrating all the time what we're doing there. Obviously, reputation in this ecosystem that's been going on. You look south of the border, and making sure that we consumers understand our value. Realtors' value, and making sure realtors can articulate their value very clearly to consumers, both on the buy side and the sell side. And then, securing a future for Realtor.ca. So those were all challenges, opportunities, and the vision now is for CREA to really go back to its roots, which is advocacy, which is defender of reputation, which is really enforcing the real important fundamentals of MLS. The multiple listing service, which is, that transparency, that access to information, cooperation. Those are the fundamentals of that MLS trademark.
And thank you for sharing that. I think it's great to get some further insight, maybe some clarity for some people, just to fully understand what is the direction. Because naturally, obviously, with a lot of the news and a lot of the announcements that have come down the pipe to the membership, there's been questions, there's been concerns, there's been confusion. I mean, one of the things that I go to as we were even preparing for today's show was, and I'll label it as the decision to privatize. However, I fully understand it's not a decision to privatize. This was, in fact, the decision to transition into a wholly owned taxable subsidiary of CREA. So I thought maybe we take an opportunity for a moment just to kind of clarify the difference for people so they fully understand, because there was concern there. And forgive me before I sort of open that floor to the answer of that. There was comparison at some time of looking at a car dealership, and they own the lot, they have the cars on the lot. They're the ones that advertise their cars, and then let's say I come along and say, hey, I'd like to sell my car, but I don't want you to do anything. I want to put it on the lot where you get a lot of traffic. And people sort of went, well, why would they do that? And some people compared it that way. And I said, let's get some clarity to that, right? Let's open up that so people more understand. So I want to dig in with you a little bit more on this, but I figured let's start maybe on that part of clarifying the difference for people so they fully understand what is the difference and what was the decision there.
Right. So having been involved with the initial task force that looked at this very thing in the future of Realtor.ca, there's ways to raise money, and some of it is through outside investment or other opportunities. Right off the bat, the task force came together, unanimously said there is going to be no outside investment in this company. other than, and not even boards and associations. So it's going to be a wholly owned subsidiary. So, okay, when we start from that point of view, that means that the only shareholder is CREA, and members are shareholders technically through their membership in CREA. The other key principle in the beginning was around revenue, and if we're lucky enough to have some income after taxes, etc., that would be, it's called revenue reinvestment. So any revenue will be reinvested back into the company. And then the third guiding principle was around governance excellence. So the thought that it needed to have some independence, it needed to have tech individuals on that board, a technology focused CEO. And while CREA will have oversight, and obviously the entity will report back because we are the only shareholder, that it will have that independence in some ways to generate revenue. Now, having said that, there are some guardrails around the revenue generation. So no selling leads back to realtors. That is baked into the governance document, so that will not happen. And the other one is no advertising on active listing pages. So when we do, if we do begin to look at those types of things like advertising, for example, it will be on things like our living room blog or other connected assets to Realtor.ca. So does that explain that, it's really about how could we raise capital? Oh, and I should say that important in this is that a percentage of the $310 that members pay a year for the CREA services, all the things that we do, a portion of that will go to fund Realtor.ca in the beginning as it gets up and running. And so the business case actually laid out a very conservative 9-year projection where that amount of money going from CREA to Realtor.ca will gradually decrease as the revenues ramp up. We hope it's sooner than later. That money can remain with CREA to expand our advocacy efforts or whatever the board of directors decides it is necessary in our future.
And it's certainly helpful, and I almost want to kind of dive into some of those topics even deeper a little bit, if that's okay, and sort of look at but the overarching umbrella of it all. If I said to you, and you've just listed out the main factors with the yes at the end of that, was the biggest one about revenue? Was that the idea? Or you know what, Janice? Let me re-ask that and ask you in a way of, were there challenges that maybe the membership even wasn't privy to, that when we looked into their yourself and the team that's around and everybody that came together to kind of build on to this next chapter of, were there challenges that we were trying to address?
Well, yeah, I mean, you mentioned revenue. So CREA is funded through membership dues. It's $310 a year. CREA had asked for an increase to address some of the things that they saw coming with respect to technology with some really well-funded competitors in the space. And they have to get the permission of boards and associations to raise dues. They didn't get that go ahead. So then it was starting to look at, well, how can we diversify revenues? And as we started to talk about diversifying revenues, that comes back to the fact that CREA is a not-for-profit association. And there are certain things that we can't do. That is, the more that you get away from your core purpose of your association, the more likely that CRA is to look into you and say, perhaps you're existing for the purpose of generating revenue rather than services back to members. We all know that Realtor.ca provides an amazing value and service to our members as well as CREA. But in our articles of incorporation, or I should say consumers, but in our articles of incorporation, there are certain things that we are able to do. And diversifying revenue in some of the ways that we looked into, there's about 30 that we identified through working with outside experts. The business case is based on 5 of those, taking those sort of low-hanging fruit and the ones that are easiest to implement in a way, but they all will require some investment. And so to pointedly answer your question, it was about resources. It was about wanting a platform of Realtor.ca to continue to evolve and innovate. It's getting more and more expensive to do so. And we have some well-funded competitors in the space, and we want to maintain our market position, which is 48%, sometimes over 50% some months. We have an excellent position, and we want to maintain that. So it was taking a step back and saying, how can we solve our resource issues? How can we diversify? And how can we minimize risk while doing it?
Okay. Now some of that revenue, as we talk to then, is I assume there would be. Maybe there's some insights you can or cannot share, but in terms of when we start talking, and I realize it's a 9-year plan, so we've got some time to get there. At the moment, we need to get the funding. We need to be taking some from the dues. I'm making an assumption here that we see this starting to become profitable at some point.
Yes.
And there will be revenue there. Are there plans or is there any insights we can take from some of that revenue that's going to be generated and how that might be generated from Realtor.ca and then used to support the members of CREA?
Yeah, well, first of all, that would be a lovely problem to have sooner than later, we hope. But the revenue reinvestment principle is key. So that if anything, if we came to the point where the revenue that's been invested, we can't think of anything more to do with it. Would that mean that CREA will make some decisions around membership dues themselves? Could they be reduced? Again, all of that will have to be approved by the membership, and any changes to those core principles would have to be approved by the membership.
Right. No, naturally. And I guess it's all sort of futuristic look aheads to say what could possibly be. And as we look at the impact on members, I guess if we were to summarize that, how do we see all of this benefiting the realtors and I guess the broader sort of real estate community?
Of course. Yeah. Well, we think better leads, for one thing. We'll have more qualified leads to provide. We'll have a more robust ecosystem. Consumers are really using Realtor.ca as a research tool, a beginning research tool. The whole point is to connect consumers with realtors. So we believe that the more that we provide in terms of value for consumers, to keep it that number one trusted resource, to continue to evolve it, to also meet the needs of the younger generation. And all of that will benefit realtors for sure. In terms of their experience on the platform, they won't see much difference. We just hope that consumers will continue to see the value and will continue to want to go there, use it as their go-to resource, and therefore connect with a realtor.
I look at it from both sides, being a member as well as being a consumer and a homeowner. I know that the one app I have on my phone and my go-to app is always Realtor.ca. I don't look to any of those
Good to hear.
Well, yeah, I don't. I personally, I look at it and think to myself, there might be other opportunities, other platforms to get some information. That being said, where are they getting the information from? And are they as comprehensive? Are they as full of everything I need as Realtor might be?
Right.
To me, it's the mainstay. To me, it's the place to be. To me, it's the platform if you want to go shopping for real estate or looking at real estate, exploring real estate here in Canada.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
and many of those other
personal opinion stuff.
That's great. And actually, the other point is that some of those other platforms are powered by Realtor.ca. And in those cases, those leads come back through Realtor.ca to realtors. I mean, that's just the way that it works. So, we see that whenever, we see our market share, which has, been so fantastic. And when we grow, others, grow as well, and realtor websites grow. We're really the Switzerland of real estate, but very trusted brand. In Switzerland, I mean that we represent everybody equally, and that's an important principle as well.
So, I have to touch on the topic of leads right now. You've brought it up a few times, and I think it's something. First, it's an important message that I like to share to the industry itself when we talk about leads. And I recognize that over the past number of years, it's become that buzzword. It's become that
Mm-hmm.
norm. Everybody understands what we
Mm-hmm.
mean when we say leads. I like to really clarify that with the industry, and this is not specific to what you have brought up in using the word.
Mm-hmm.
Moreover, to the folks listening,
Right.
that I always want to encourage everybody to not think of the people as leads, but to think of them as opportunities, to think of them as
Mm.
people, as homeowners, as parents, as families. Uh,
Absolutely.
and I say that specific to the game of real estate, the
Mm-hmm.
business of real estate,
Mm-hmm.
because again, this is people's biggest assets. And
Absolutely.
when we look at it as a commodity, or we treat it as if we're selling apples, for lack of their better examples, I think that we don't put enough onus on the importance of our role. And
Absolutely.
again, Janice, this is my
Mm-hmm.
message to the
Mm-hmm.
industry, and I
I
share
love
this
that
often.
message. Mm-hmm.
It's just we've really got to understand the positioning, the role we get to play of helping people buy and sell real estate.
Yeah.
And in saying that, we know that this business always has been, and what I would bet on always will be, a people business,
Mm-hmm.
and that 70 to 90% of a realtor's business, typically speaking, will come through repeat and referral business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that always leads my mind, because we spend a lot of time in the world of marketing and systems and processes and performance and helping people get to that next level. But it always begs the question for me of, if we know that 70-90% of a realtor's business is coming from their contact list, their sphere, the people that know them, like them, and trust them, who are all of these people that, and this is not a question for you, it's more of just a statement from me, but who are all of these people that are going online, random kind of strangers going online to meet another random stranger through a website? It could be Realtor, it could be ABC, and asking somebody for their help in real estate. I myself, this is total opinion, I don't believe there's as many people out there shopping that way and asking for help that way
Mm-hmm.
as there are probably people who are reaching out to somebody that they know, like, and trust.
Mm-hmm.
We know that, down south of the border, which has nothing to do with us, there are lawsuits going on down there where they claim that 50 to 60% of these leads are unqualified, that they're being resold to multiple parties.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And again, based on my own 2 cents of who are all these people that are supposedly these leads,
Mm-hmm.
we're starting to see the shift.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious, as we've brought up
Mm-hmm.
the word leads, I wanted to kind of put
Mm-hmm.
that insight in there, but
Mm-hmm.
more come back, and you've already stated, forgive me, correct me if I'm wrong, clarify for us, we're not selling leads to anybody.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's not going to be a tool on there that says you can purchase leads.
No, no.
Okay.
I mean, that's a fundamental. That was one of the first core, sort of rules and guardrails, so to speak,
Yep.
around where Realtor.ca could go when it came to diversifying revenue. A lot of the portals, competing portals, do that. And it's quite expensive. And so the value that realtors get through Realtor.ca, and whether it's leads or not, is just the fact that it is a trusted brand, and that it's Realtor.ca. That name Realtor is right there. It stands for service, competence, adherence to a code of ethics. And you touched on some really important things. There's this is serious stuff. People's lives. We believe that equitable housing is a basic human right, and that home fosters dignity and belonging.
Mm-hmm.
And so, realtors have the privilege of guiding consumers and providing professional services to guide consumers through that home buying and selling journey. And the public, when they connect with somebody and help them through that journey, it's a relationship like no other. You touched on relationships. And when it goes well, it's trust. There's trust built. They do things like, you hear what realtors do in order to help their clients. It's unbelievable, and they should be so proud of that. and that Realtor stands for that service, competence, and adherence to code of ethics. So really, I think the conversation that you're starting here is about it's the leads are that's the outward stuff. Behind the scenes are all the people trying to make their way through this housing and affordability crisis. We have it across the continuum. We are working with the coalition all across the continuum. Alliance to End Homelessness, Habitat for Humanity, Canadian Cooperative Association, just to make sure that any of the suggestions that we make to policymakers are well data driven, and also we understand the pain points and the challenges of each part of the ecosystem because it's all connected. You can't have market housing without good rental housing, without we talk about affordable housing, but there's so many other parts of it, and so that's why it's super important to us to remember those fundamentals, and really what we believe is our social purpose beyond buying and selling homes.
A message which I know from our end we will continue to share out there is just the importance of the role that we are really blessed to be able to do, and how serious of a role it is, and how important it is for people's livelihoods. I mean, we go back in time to, we talked about, when you said, multiple offers and whatnot, and it got me thinking of that 2020, 2021 era in our lives, which we don't want to necessarily go back on all of what took place there. But we did see a lot of activity in the real estate market, and we saw a lot of people that were purchasing homes, and look, we're coming into a place right now, 25 and 26, where a lot of the mortgages are coming up for renewal.
Yes.
And I have been sharing to the industry that there is a lot of opportunity coming. There will be transactions happening. There will be positivity. There will be optimism. There's a lot of optimism, at least from my side. And I do believe that the foundation that we are working on now, each of us individually and collectively as just members, that's going to paint the picture for where people will win in the coming months and a few years, in my mind. So I see a lot of positive coming down the pipe.
For sure.
I want one more thing about this leads. I love the answer. I really do. I think there's a ton of integrity to that. The question I have, maybe there's the question, maybe it's a comment, but why did we decide, if we're looking at a revenue opportunity, to say, hey, we're not going to go down this road of selling leads?
Because we think there's other opportunities, and that realtors always already often will pay for some of those services, and a lot, actually, quite frankly. And again, the idea that Realtor.ca is Switzerland, that that was just one of the first things that everybody said together. We are not going to sell leads. You already pay for Realtor.ca through your membership dues. And of course, we'll be able to supplement through other revenue generation opportunities. We think we've got a lot of solid offerings on the revenue side that are just poised to make some money for us, and we just didn't need it. But I wanted to, if you don't mind, touch on about you mentioned south of the border, and I think that since I've been in the industry, the push from consumers has been around transparency. And I think that if there's any advice that I would give our members right now, it's around getting very clear about your value proposition on the buy side as well as the sell side. Also, explaining transparently how you get paid. And that is going to be really, really important as we look at, potential suits up here that are going on, haven't been determined, class actions yet. We're a lot further behind, but we can watch what's going on down there. Lots of lessons learned.
Right.
So, again, realtors provide so much value. So easy to talk about that value on the listing presentation, and now let's remember to do it on the buy side as well.
I really love the fact that you added that in. Again, it's a sentiment I echo all the time, especially with our clients and our audiences, very much of the importance, because I do believe, and look, and we don't have time to get into the depths of this part when I say this today, but I do believe this comes down to performance for each individual who is running their business, what opportunities they create for themselves, what opportunities they're able to take advantage of, and their sanity. There's only so much time in a day, and if we're spending that time running and doing without being transparent about what the process actually looks like, running maybe in fear of possibly losing somebody if we take too much or attempt to take too much time to explain, I believe we're doing a disservice to ourselves as well as the person that we're working with. So I really love
about
the fact that
setting
you brought that up.
expectations, and expectations are so important. You mentioned
It's
communication, so important, and that's some of the advice that I always give. When I would do the new member orientations in Ottawa, I would talk about being a good problem solver, remembering to keep learning and don't get too set in your ways, and don't forget how to learn. And then the third thing is remembering that relationships are everything. So when that transaction is over, the relationships that you continue to build, you mentioned the referrals that you'll get, those sorts of things, those are so critical. And so you help people through the process, you stay in touch with them. I know realtors do a fantastic job of that. And keep them in your thoughts, because they are going through a lot right now.
That certainly is true. So looking ahead now, so we've put that that part of it, the leads away. We look at future developments of the platform of itself. I guess maybe, and I think we've sort of woven a bunch of this into the conversation already. But I thought, as we just came off of the topic around revenue growth, the topic of Realtor.ca, it brought up leads, and when it comes to future development, what kind of features should members be expecting to see as a result of these changes?
Well, something that we've already launched, members may not have seen, but there is a call to action for consumers to be able to find out how much money they would qualify for. And that for a mortgage. We call those referrals to ancillary services. And we're starting with a pilot project to see how that goes. And that's one of the first things that we have launched already and are looking to see how that goes. It will, the way that works is it will end up, so we're talking about leads, but these are leads to outside from consumers to connect eventually to potentially a mortgage. So there's different points in the pipeline where small percentage will come back to Realtor.ca. All the portals do it, and so we've just launched that. We're looking and setting infrastructure up to modernize our data distribution facility, which we touched on earlier. So right now, many of the third-party destinations pay the same amount, but we're looking to meter that so that they pay sort of at pay to play, and how much data they use. It'll be a metered approach like that. That's another one. So those are the first two, and then advertising. So we're looking at adding some advertising, as I said, to meet consumers where they are. It's not going to be on listing pages. It's going to be very tasteful. And so that's the third revenue gen in the first 2 years of the entity starting. So we were incorporated on January 6th. And
2020.
Yes.
2025.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we held our first board meeting yesterday. I'd mentioned that there's 3 of us on that initial board. We have through the organization, we're actually going through a huge transition. If you can imagine, we are working with an expert that's helping us go through everything from shared services, how that's going to go, to which are the staff that are actually going to go over to Realtor.ca as of April 1st. That's going to be its beginning of its operational year. And so we're working on all of that. It's been incredibly busy. Since we got the yes vote, we have been in a sprint to get us to the point of actually being able to file for incorporation and get our ducks in a row. And so it's been this whole transformative journey within the CREA building here, working with the team. And I always talk about right leader at the right time. And I would say that we have that in our board of directors. certainly in James Mabey, our chair, and the rest of the board is so fantastic. We also have the right leadership team here at CREA to be able to make sure that this is a success. At the end of the day, we want true, thriving organizations who are deeply connected, who are going to add value to realtors each and every day.
You mentioned about third party. We mentioned about advertising. I wanted to touch on the tools marketplace. I understand that's
Yes.
going to be launched internally.
Mhm.
And actually, I want to. Maybe I should ask that. Is that going to be internal? Are there going to be? And I think I kind of got a sense of there will be, but third party vendors. And if there are third party vendors, I guess there's two questions there. One, how will those vendors be selected? Will anybody be able to apply? Will they be reached out to by CREA? Is there somewhere that they can say, hey, we want to be part of this? Can you consider us? And will, as you brought up the word data, will they have access to any of the data within the platform?
Well, that tools marketplace we have in mind things that will directly help with Realtor.ca. So they're connected directly to, so, thinking like, we haven't actually delved too much into that yet, other than to project out what that might look like. Because we're really focusing in the first 2 years right now on those 3 revenue opportunities that I've just mentioned. That we call them the low-hanging fruit.
Right.
But what I will say is that around advertisement, for example, we're very concerned and making sure that we have rules in place, which would be no different than the tools marketplace, to ensure that the realtor brand is always kept in the highest reputation. So any advertisers that we work with will have to undergo sort of scrutiny in terms of whether they fit our brand, whether they for example, I can imagine like gambling and those kinds of ads will be off the table. There will be a lot of advertisers that come to us, and we will put them through a rigorous analysis to determine whether they're a fit. And I would see the same thing for the tools marketplace. But the key with the tools marketplace is, say that 10 times in a row, is to actually make sure that it complements what we're already offering, and helps realtors and consumers in that way.
Okay, and so will companies have an opportunity to, I guess, apply to be there?
I can't answer that for sure,
Okay.
but I would imagine that, once we start to sort of build out what that program looks like, what the opportunities are, and put it out there, I'm sure we'll have a lot of people knocking at our door. I don't think people realize the significance of the Realtor.ca brand in Canada. We are approached all the time by all sorts of third parties and vendors and people that want to work with us, national brands, and that's our sweet spot. We want national because that's what we are, a national brand, and so finding that fit is going to be super important.
Oh, absolutely, and I know. Being up here in Canada, and we're talking Realtor.ca. One thing that we all look at as Canadians is that opportunity to have the Canadian exposure within Canadian platforms, and it's something that I know is just an ongoing sentiment through a lot of the different service providers in the industry. Now, as we talk about advertising and third party and tools marketplace. There's been talk, and there's been even subsequent concerns around the advertising, and whether or not consumers are going to be faced with increased advertising while they're on the platform. I guess maybe we could take an opportunity there for a moment just to, look at, because I know when any of us are online anywhere these days, you're getting hit at every angle, emails, social media, websites, you name it. So what should people know? And I don't know if you have enough to be able to share on this at this moment yet, but what should people know about the overall experience that people are going to have, on the platform as we sort of progress?
Well, tell me about it. Trying to get into my Wordle every morning is an exercise in frustration. Right? Sometimes I end up, almost buying a skirt. But this is going to be very carefully thought out. We do not. One of the reasons that consumers come to Realtor.ca is because it's a great experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so the advertising that we're considering is not going to be, like I said, on those listing pages. It's going to be in connected assets that it makes sense. So and even the opportunity for consumers to find out how much they qualify for is very tastefully done, and it's done at the right point. So it's not in your face. It's not taking you in different directions where you don't want to go. You just like, oh my gosh, I just want to look at the pictures of this house, please. You know, that is not the experience that we will go for, and we'll be very, very careful and monitor it very carefully. So if we see that some of the advertising is starting to create a problem, we will definitely be. I would imagine, this is for the Realtor.ca team, but I would imagine that they will be very careful about that, because again, our goal is to maintain and grow our market position as that trusted brand.
I got to tell you, I love hearing that. I chuckled when you said almost end up buying a skirt. It really is the truth. Every time we do go look at a screen. I mean, I was having a conversation with somebody about this yesterday. They've got one of those scratch pads, the digital notepad called Remarkable, where you
Right, I
can
have
actually
that too.
write. And I'm looking at getting one, and I noticed that this gentleman had one. So I asked him, "What did you think about it?" And the first thing he said to me, which is funny because what they even say in their advertising is, and this is not an advertisement for them. The fact is, though, you can't get caught all of a sudden looking at something else. There's no distractions. It's there for one purpose and one purpose only. And so we bring that back to Realtor.ca, and really, I think of it the exact same way. I do feel that the experience is great. I do feel like when I do log into that system, from even a consumer perspective, and I'm in there, I'm there for a purpose, and that purpose is right there. I'm not getting distracted. I'm not getting bombarded. I'm not having all sorts of pop-ups coming at me, which are just throwing me off of the overall experience.
Absolutely.
And I love the fact that we even use this word experience. It's something that, again, I think is very, very important that everybody thinks about. And I'll take this right back to what we said a moment ago about informing not just our sellers, but our buyers as well. It creates an experience, and it's the experience that people remember. It's the experience that people come back for. And that could be across any platform, any business, any industry. So I really like the answer on that. Now, you know, as we talk to this and we think there's still a lot of people with questions, there's people with concerns out there. There's been mixed feelings about the decision. I know people have asked, you know, why are we doing this and not going, you know, why not remain not-for-profit? We've already addressed the topic of revenue and growth, but so I would just overarching ask, how is CREA, I guess, or what opportunities is CREA providing to members who do have concerns? How are they addressing them? People that are skeptical or opposed, what could they do if they still have thoughts or they have questions or opinions?
That's a good question. I always suggest they talk to their local boards and associations, for sure. You can send your concerns to support@CREA.ca. We can talk you through some of the issues that you might have or concerns that you might have. I would say, make sure you read what's available on our members' website, the business case, the reasons behind it, the fact that we are going to be very careful about this transition, that we are going to be very mindful. It's going to be very data-driven. There's a lot of outside experts that have helped us with it. And so we feel very confident in the future. And we feel very confident in saying that we are going to have a great future for Realtor.ca. I think some of the concerns are, again, we talked about south of the border earlier. Some people have been concerned because they saw what happened with Realtor.com. And I always point out that Realtor.com never started in the same position that we are fortunate to have in Canada, in the way that every single board and association in Canada sends us a subset of data to display on Realtor.ca. Realtor.com never enjoyed, in fact, in the US, it has always been a very fragmented market. And so when it came to deciding the future of Realtor.com, And by the way, also realtors paid additionally to put their listings on Realtor.com. And that's why it also didn't have the comprehensive listing set that we enjoy in Canada. And so we're so fortunate to have the trust of our boards and associations to be able to power Realtor.ca through that data. And so Realtor.com faced a different challenge. They ended up getting some outside investment, which we're not doing. Those outside investors eventually wanted to sort of push for different results. And as a result, NAR sort of quote unquote lost control. So that's the thing that we wanted to avoid here in Canada. And that's why we set guardrails around it. That's why we set the wholly owned subsidiary of CREA, as CREA being the only shareholder. CREA will continue to have oversight. We will have one member. Eventually, it will just be, we have a transition board right now for up to 2 years. Mm-hmm. But after that, it will be a skills-based technology board. Doesn't mean that realtors won't necessarily serve on it, but it will be very focused on that. And then the reporting back, making sure that through the shareholder declaration between CREA and the entity, we have baked in a number of reporting requirements. Oversight will have one board member, a CREA board member that will sit on that board. So we've tried to be very thoughtful about that balance between oversight and also letting it fly when it comes to being a technology company.
Very interesting and great example and even comparison to what's going on down in the U.S. versus what we're doing up here, so people do fully have an even better understanding. Mm-hmm. Any chance that as this becomes even larger and growing, that we look to sell the platform?
Well, that would have to be approved by members.
Right. Okay.
Great. So any decisions about Realtor.ca's future, should it be so successful and we get offered a ton of money, that is something that all members would decide together.
I think people would be very content to hear that. Is there anything I didn't ask you specific to the platform that maybe you wanted to share with anybody that maybe we just didn't touch on today? And I know there's a lot of things we can get into in details and whatnot, but just any sort of big outstanding topics maybe that we didn't cover off about the platform itself and the changes.
No, I can't think of any. I mean, we often get asked about, sold data, why it's not available. We have to work within the regulatory environment that exists as a national organization. So we are able to get some sold data from jurisdictions where that is offered, because consumers, quite frankly, are looking for it. They also, the market share goes up when we offer that kind of, experience again, where they can see a full sort of a full analysis of what prices have done, et cetera. But realtors can still provide all of that insight and, guide people through the complexities of the market in their area, because it's all local. And what you see sometimes nationally, and in fact, this morning when we were talking with the press, it's local, and not everything is happening at the same pace across the country. And so with respect to the platform, I would say that really it is evolving into that consumer research tool. And we've talked about that. I can't think of anything else that I would say, except that, we're committed to making sure that Realtor.ca is that primary business tool for realtors, and also for consumers to have an excellent experience, and the younger generation as well.
Well, look, when it comes to sold data, I have looked at other platforms that do provide some of this data, and I don't believe it's very black and white. I think that people really need to understand, and this is where you brought up value proposition earlier. This is, again, where the value proposition comes from with the realtor, of being able to explain what you see is not necessarily what you get. Yeah. And so being able to have that differentiator and that explanation around why did this go for that, but this went for this. Let's have a further breakdown. Yeah, absolutely. There's got to be context. Otherwise, it doesn't tell a true story. Now,
for sure.
Janice, is all of this, I guess, did this all come into effect essentially as of the top of January?
Yeah, so the vote to go ahead was October 23rd
Right.
of 2024, so not that long ago. We had already been sort of preparing to get our ducks in a row should we get a yes vote.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just, like I said, started to sprint right after that and get our, within the walls here of CREA, we've been working super hard on that. And January 6th, we actually were officially incorporated. And the CREA board had already appointed the transition board, which is myself, James Maybe, and David Oikel, and David's the chair. So we were able to hold our first meeting yesterday. We did a number of the ceremonial signing that needed to get done, and incorporated the bylaws, which all boards and associations and members, they're all accessible for you to see. And you will see through those incorporating documents and the bylaws and the shareholder declaration, et cetera, you will see the importance that we placed on ensuring that we have oversight of the entity, that we continue to work in partnership. And yeah, it's a super exciting time for the organization. And also, this great opportunity to go back to what we really were founded on, which is, and the reason CREA was established was around federal advocacy efforts, and so important.
I was going right there with it
Okay.
to ask you about that, because I wanted to
Mhm.
sort of switch off of the Realtor.ca perspective,
Mhm.
and ask about some of those key federal advocacy efforts that CREA is currently focusing on. Is there anything specific we can share and maybe provide some insight on?
Mm-hmm. Well, certainly, what we've been talking to government about are around, this requirement to build all of these homes. They're not unfortunately called homes; they're called units, and we want to make sure that we're building the right kind of like we talk about equitable housing. We talk about the fact that for many years we haven't been building what we call the missing middle, and it's missing for a reason, because we haven't been building those townhouses, those duplexes, those semi-detached, those types of things. We've been so focused on building single families and condos. So you'll see that single family and condos have grown so much, but that's not where you can raise a family. So we think that innovation in the home building process is going to be key moving forward. And so we've been talking to government about that, as well as ensuring that even though our immigration targets are being lowered, that immigrants that come into the country are that skilled labor that we need. That would really help because we have a construction industry that is aging, and that we're quite concerned about as well. Our productivity hasn't been what we had hoped, despite all of the efforts. Housing is very complex. It requires all three levels of government to coordinate. And we have been also pushing for a housing secretariat that brings forward all industry players, including development, home builders, people of across the spectrum, real estate, realtors, anybody involved at various levels of government as well. We would love to see a permanent housing secretariat that continues to coordinate our efforts. I was a bit concerned that there's sort of this stop and go. And also, of course, interest rates have had such an impact on what's been actually been able to be built over the last since we called for this, like crazy number of homes that we need to build to bring us back into some affordability range. So it's important, yeah.
Yeah, affordability is so huge. I know driving sort of, just adjacent to my neighborhood, there's a new subdivision being built, and the big sort of, hoarding on the outside of it says, starting at 1.8 million. And it
Yeah,
just blows me away
yeah.
to look at starting at and to
Mhm.
think, yes, some people will have this money to do so. Does the population have that kind of money to do so? And that's not necessarily a question more than it's just a statement to look at when we talk to affordability of what are people able to get into and maybe, not able to get into. But
Mhm.
that would sort of look to the future of real estate then. What do we envision, for the future of real estate here in Canada? And I guess, from the role from CREA, what does CREA do to position itself sort of at the forefront of these changes? And you sort of brought up housing forecast off the top of the show.
Yeah. So, so housing forecast, certainly, we have some rich data analytics that show how the demographic shifts that are coming, like the next cohort that are entering their home buying years, they already have, are bigger than the boomers, way bigger. And so there's a lot of, first-time home buyers looking to try to find that opportunity. Some of them are relocating to find it. We talked about that this morning in our housing forecast. We're finding some people, deciding that I can't raise a family and buy a house, and I can't find attainable housing here in Ontario or BC, and we're moving to Alberta, where the prices are continuing to grow, but not, they're not certainly as expensive right now. I mean, in BC, your average home is well over $1 million right now, which was fed through the COVID sort of escalation of people moving and saying, oh, I may never have to go to the workplace again, so I'm going to go and ski, in my off time, be something closer to nature on water or by a ski hill. And so even those markets have grown significantly. So the Maritimes and Alberta are really primed to really, once the interest rate comes down again, which we expect it will. We think there's a lot of demand sitting on the sidelines. And again, if we have the supply, we're going to see some price escalation in those markets that haven't had it, or as much yet. Whereas in BC and Ontario and a lot of the areas, that price growth has already happened. Not to say that it won't grow a little bit, but certainly the other parts of Canada are primed to really ramp up. So I think in terms of, once the interest rate comes down, people are kind of sitting on the sidelines wondering how far it's going to fall. We have some headwinds. Let's think about what might be happening with the administration coming in again south of the border. Some of the threats that have been made there could really impact. It's one of our key risks that we mentioned, because that could all bets are off once something like that begins to happen if we end up in a trade war. So yeah, kind of a mixed bag, really.
Absolutely, and it's when we talk about the future, nobody truly knows. We know what we want to plan for. We know what we believe in. We know what we're striving for. And naturally, just like anything else, it's about, putting our best foot forward and having the right people in place, the right vision, and being on a mission to go and achieve that.
Right.
And it certainly sounds like CREA is always there on behalf of the members, and, the entire housing industry as a whole up here in Canada.
Absolutely. And collaborating across the continuum. Again, I pointed out that earlier, that we need to understand the challenges and the pain points at all points in the continuum, so that we can advocate for policy that addresses all of it. And we are very data driven in our approach. We have a great, access to other data sets that really help us provide a really fulsome analysis and perspective for home buyers and sellers, and also policymakers.
Some fantastic insights. I have to ask you, in reading your bio off the top, not only did we mention your prior roles and obviously your current role, we also mentioned vice chair of the World Animal Protection Canada. And really, I bring that up more in not saying, hey, let's go through the ins and outs of that. Moreover, about balancing roles. How do you balance your role? And I bring this up very specifically for our audience, again, who wears a lot of different hats in a day, has a ton to do, and typically speaking, we all to some degree feel like we just don't have enough time to get it done. And I thought that this would be a unique opportunity to learn from you, and share some insights there. How do you balance the role between, being the CEO of CREA, and that position as, again, vice chair of the World Animal Protection Canada? How do they complement each other? How do you balance all of that?
Wow. I don't know. How do
There's where the bead of sweat comes out. It's like, I don't know how I do it.
No, but I said, I would say that I'm very cause-based, and also I find my passion through, causes and the values that I live. And so for me, I find time for those things that are, super important, and relationships being one of them. And I am fortunate to have a very supportive spouse as well, who my partner, who really helps me a lot, keeps me in perspective. I get out to the cottage, like I said, to get some downtime. And I think that when you love what you do, and you love working with people, and you really ensure that you lean into your values, then you just naturally find the time. And I have a great team here at CREA too. It's fine for me to stand up here as the CEO and say that I do all of this stuff, but the fact is that they really help me through so much, and I allow me to focus on that outward, sort of leadership profile that I'm continuing to build on behalf of all realtors.
Our teams are the backbone. That is for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes behind the scenes, sometimes in the forefront, but it is certainly not an individual effort. And
No.
as we talk to that, I wanted to ask you from a leadership perspective,
Mm-hmm.
some lessons that you've learned along the way, or maybe we turn that into, advice for realtors.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any key leadership lessons that you have learned through your career, or any advice that we can give to realtors who are looking to adapt, who are looking to thrive in this evolving real estate landscape of ours?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I always would recommend that you get involved with your local real estate board in some way, because you meet so many great people who care about the profession, who are really committed to making a difference, who want to foster, growth for the industry, et cetera. So that's always an advice that I would give you. Learn so much by being involved, and actually finding out what boards and associations do. Again, the lessons that I talked about earlier that I give it as advice to new realtors are used to when I spoke to them was all around, being a good problem solver, which is around being professional, certainly advocating for your side, but remembering at the end of the day that, treating the other side as a professional, and those negotiations being held very respectfully, dealing with problems as they come up respectfully, professionally, because consumers are watching. They watch how realtors deal with each other. They watch how their realtor talks about the other side. And so I always sort of really recommend that. There's so much learning to do to, find your niche, things that you're really super interested in, keep learning, keep growing. And then the final thing is about relationships. Go out and build those relationships, network. I mentioned organized real estate as an opportunity for that. There's also so much stuff within brokerages. I think that after the pandemic, people kind of sat back and they not coming back into the office, but those actually are really important opportunities to talk to your colleagues. And meeting again, we're in coopetition. We're all there's such a competitive industry, but other brokerages and people, you learn all the time from other realtors, and you just never know. You meet somebody, and then the next week you end up on the other side of a deal with them. It's just how life works. So those relationships, leaning into those, building them within your own brokerage and beyond, is super important. So those are the three pieces of advice I would give.
There is so much to unpack there, but fantastic advice. And I got to say, at first, I've heard the word cooperation.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But
No worries.
it does speak to itself, absolutely. But you mentioned about the way we treat each other, and the consumers are looking. We have said that for a long time. The experience, again, as we bring that back up, the
Mm-hmm.
experience that you bring to the table also has to do with how you treat each other within the industry.
Mm-hmm.
The cooperation
Absolutely.
is huge. The relationships are massive. I mean, fantastic advice there. Now, all that being said, you've shared some amazing insights with us today. I cannot thank you enough.
Oh, my
I think
pleasure.
some of these lessons you just taught us at the end, I could almost sit back and say, hey, let's do an entire show just on that. I think it was
Mm,
fantastic. I really do. All that being said, for everything that you do in a day,
mm-hmm.
when your day is over
Mm-hmm.
and it's time to, sit back, either kick the feet up, lay the head down, just breathe for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know it's been a successful day for you?
A successful day for me, when I think about it and I come home, and I've said so many times since I've taken this role, I love where I'm at right now, because I feel like all of the experience and the relationships that I've built and all the work that I've done in the industry over the past 21 plus years has come to the point where I feel like I'm really contributing and having providing value back to the organization and therefore back to realtors. So a successful day is where I've sat with the team, we've talked through some real strategic thinking around where we could go on certain advocacy policy asks. What we want to talk about at the press conference, for example. It's the conversations that I have with the team and the board of directors when I meet with them, and I get inspired by by all the things that they want to do on behalf of realtors, and making sure realtors remain at the forefront of the public mind when it comes to professionalism and excellence. And it's other people that really, at the end of the day, inspire me. And I feel really good when I've had a lot of those positive interactions. People have given me insights. They've talked to me. It's not a one-sided conversation. It's back and forth. That's what really excites me about the role. And I've really enjoyed it so far. And it's been a real privilege.
Fantastic. If you could leave everybody with one thought in summary of everything we had the opportunity to discuss today, what would you say to everybody?
Oh, can I go back to my word of build? I really think
that.
This is an excellent opportunity for us to all build on our relationships, build on our education to consumers, build on the value that we bring, remember the value that we bring, build on the pride that we have. That's really, I guess, what I would say is let's work together, let's collaborate. Let's inspire each other and ensure a bright future for Realtor.ca, CREA, and all the realtors across Canada.
Fantastic, Janice. This has been a fantastic conversation. This has been some great insights. We thank you tremendously for your time and everything that you are doing to help this industry get even better than it is. Thank you for making the time for the show today.
It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the Mindshare podcast. Whether it's on one of your favorite podcast platforms or directly from our website at mindshare101.com. While you're there, explore how our full range of services, one-to-one coaching, the Mindshare Collective group coaching, momentum training, and keynote speaking can take your business to the next level. And don't forget to download your free copy of the Ultimate Marketing Bundle so you can build more mindshare and earn more market share, as well as learn more about joining the revolution. For any inquiries, just get in touch with us today. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to leave a review at www.ratethispodcast.com/mindshare101. Connect with me on TikTok and Facebook at Mindshare101 and on Instagram at David Greenspan101. I want to thank Kit's Keep in Touch Systems, REM Magazine, and Revel Realty for their continued support as sponsors of the show. This has been another episode of the Mindshare Podcast. Thank you for tuning in.